We're all on a search. The question is, what are we really looking for? I feel like there's only three kinds of people that are really out there. People who are searching for something, and they claim they found it. There are people out there who are searching, and they haven't found what they're looking for, but they continue to pursue. And finally, there are these other people, for all kinds of reasons, who've stopped searching. Whether they've satisfied with what they found, whether they've just given up out of disappointment, we're all looking for something, and that search defines us. It reveals our hearts. So what are you looking for? Is it God? Is God hidden somewhere inviting us to follow him? I think deep in our hearts, when we look at our deepest desires, when we recognize who we really are and what we really want in this life, we sense that there's nothing that really satisfies us, but we still search and we still look. And so God may be tugging at our hearts in that experience of wanting to find something that nothing has ever satisfied, a desire to look for meaning and purpose beyond anything we've ever experienced. Our hearts reveal that we're men and women on a search, and that fundamentally defines who we are. And so whichever direction we lead, it has to be in pursuit of the greatest treasure that we can possibly find, and that's God. You're a Michigan man, born and raised in Westphalia?
Yeah.
And I think Westphalia, is that really a community all Catholics?
It's virtually all Catholics.
Yeah.
It was a great community when it came to really being brought up kind of with a wholesome upbringing, good family-centered upbringing.
Yeah. Do you feel like you were evangelized as a kid? Did you know Jesus?
It wasn't until later that I realized Mom and Dad instilled, I think, more in us kids than what even the surrounding parents were doing with their kids.
Right.
We had the rosary at night and we said our night prayers. It was always just kind of like you'd roll your eyes as you're going to bed.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, I get it. But that was an important thing for them. And we didn't miss a Sunday. We didn't miss a holy day of obligation. It was central there. But there was still that sense that this was a cultural thing. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't a whole lot of talk about the faith outside of the moments that we were engaging in it, at Mass or in prayer with the family.
Do you recall, at a young age, looking for God?
No, yeah. I don't. Not at a really young age. It wasn't until I was around 14 that really what brought it on was a real crisis in my life, because it was right around that time where the two schools from the two different towns were pooling into the public system. And I really lost my sense of identity, just because my whole social fabric was being shaken up. And I really got some pushback even from people who used to be my friends, and it came to this point where I started getting really depressed. I started feeling extremely lonely, and it really put me into a point where I guess I was really posed with some deep questions that I had never really taken time to think about or care about. The one, it was really scary for me because it had been going on for so long that there was such social tension at school that I remember coming home from school and just sitting down at the desk in my bedroom and looking out the window, and just the thought came to mind that I could end all this if I wanted to. It wasn't something that I was considering or trying to drum up in my mind or anything. It just sort of occurred to me that all this pain and all this loneliness and suffering and all that, I could bring that to an end, because I was looking at the barn out there on our property, and the sort of image of me climbing to the top of that barn, just jumping off, is what it kind of came to my mind, and it scared me a lot that I would even have that thought. But that's what started a sort of introspective sort of reflection on what is this all about anyway? And if there's a God, then I can't even be thinking like this. But if there isn't, then what have I got to lose?
Right.
Those were my actual thoughts back then, and it made me realize that I grew up Catholic. I'm surrounded by this Catholic culture, but I don't believe in God. That was where that real crisis moment came in my life, and I had a decision. what do? Do I sit in this and just continue to try to fight my way out of this, or do I look for God?
Yeah.
Well, I decided at that point I've really got nothing to lose. I'm going to seek for God, and the really only place I had was I had this little Bible on my shelf. It's a little Gideon's Bible.
Yeah.
I just pulled it off the shelf, and I never opened it except to put my name in the front like they ask you to, And I opened it up to the first page, and it was the genealogy of Jesus Christ. I began to read that, and I was completely unconvinced. In fact, I was more convinced that the whole Bible must just be gibberish and you can't understand it, because if you know anything about the genealogy, so-and-so is the father, so-and-so the father, so-and-so father, so-and-so. So I literally took the Bible and I threw it behind me. And it hit the wall, and I remember just thinking there is no God, and I felt like I was just plunged in a real darkness, doubt, fear, confusion, and all this. And a thought came to my mind. The thought was, just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not true. I decided, well, I'll give God a second chance. I began reading just one chapter in, and it really was just the story of the birth of Christ, and I was surprised that I could understand this. It was just a story, and I was reading along, and after about 2 chapters, which is really like a page and a half, I realized I can read this. This is a good place to search for God. So I decided I would keep reading it until I just absolutely couldn't understand anything about it anymore. I developed a new routine after school, and I would come home, I'd take my little Bible and I'd stuff it in my pocket, and I would sneak out to the woods that we had on our property. And I didn't want my brothers and sisters to catch me reading the Bible.
What do you think would have happened?
I don't know. It was just one of those awkward things where it's like, I didn't know what to expect, because reading the Bible was not part of our cultural thing.
So it's like this intimate thing. You're not sure how to, what would people do if they knew this about you?
Yeah. I found a little stump where I thought, okay, now I've secured my location here. I can sit down and I can read this Bible without anyone catching me. And I would just read up to the point wherever I thought, all right, that's enough. It might be 4, 5, 6 pages in the Bible, and then I make my way back home. One day, something happened that really started my life off on a completely new track. Something happened that no one had ever told me could. I opened up the Bible, and whatever it was I read, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember closing the Bible and just realizing, I believe that Jesus is real. It occurs to me now that I didn't believe that up until that point. It was more about Jesus was maybe sort of made into a God figure, or maybe he existed, maybe he didn't.
Yeah, like a myth that kind of grew around a man.
Exactly, and whether he was actually a historical figure or not could be, debated, and all this stuff. All the things that I think the culture somehow did get in to my own mind and my own heart. And so I remember thinking, after reading the story, and I closed the Bible and just said, I believe it. And it all happened in a very quick period of time, but I remember just making the connection that, wait a minute, I was baptized. I'm a Catholic. Jesus, if this is all real, then where in the world are you? I don't know who you are. I don't know really what you're about or anything. So I stood up from that stump and I pointed out to the sky, where I sort of imagined that God would be. And I just said, God, if you're out there, come into my heart and change my life. And I said, I can't do this alone. In one moment, what happened to me couldn't be put into words. I fell on my knees and I was crying and laughing harder and more deeply than I ever have in my life. And I was just holding my hands out like this. You're more real than me. I remember just thinking this profound thought that it's as if I'm a shadow coming from him. That my existence depends on him. And this whole time I was trying to figure out, are you real? Did we just make you up? Are you a projection of our own ideas? No, in fact, he is more real than us. If he were to stop thinking about us for a moment, we'd disappear, and the memory of us would disappear. And it was in this moment where this veil was really lifted, and I was in the presence of love that I had never experienced before. And I think that's why I was crying. It wasn't out of sadness. It was because it was out of this awareness that I have been created to be amazing. It's drawn off of his plan for me, what he desires. And it was through that love that I was able to recognize who I am. But more than anything, I was in the presence of the living God in the person of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I couldn't see him with my eyes, but I've never been more in the presence of someone than I was at that moment.
And then from that moment, what happens?
My life changed dramatically. Instead of trying to be the funny guy all the time, I just scaled back and I was just like, I don't have to do X or Y to be loved or to be accepted. I am loved and accepted. And I think it was in that moment in the woods where I realized I don't have to prove anything to anyone in order to be loved.
Yeah, and there's freedom in there, isn't there?
The thing I walked away with there was, it was as though Christ had his hands on my cheeks and he just said, Craig, I've always been with you and you are loved. I began to learn how to live out of the power of God that he gives to us. And my social life came to life. It was completely different in about 2 weeks. It's not about climbing that social ladder and pushing everyone else down. It's about really bringing love to people and really loving them.
We're all searching for something. And at times, people like Craig, people like you, people like me, we don't always realize what we're looking for. Sometimes it's after a crisis, after a broken heart, after a pain, we realize that nothing has satisfied us. So now we have a story of a man in the middle of the woods looking for God. The question is, will God show up? And at what point do we realize, will he realize that God has been looking for him?
Did you like the program you just watched? Help Shalom World bring more programs like this to a global audience. Your support helps us share the peace of Christ with the world. Visit shalomworld.org/donate.
When you're moving through high school, did you know from that experience where you want to go, what you want to do?
Yeah, I knew that I needed to give my life in service to God.
Yeah.
I knew it. Now, there was always that really scary thought, priesthood.
But naturally, if you met Jesus, you've got to be a priest.
Yeah, exactly. That was my mindset. I had a profound encounter with the living God, and through the grace of that moment, you say, I'm going to do whatever it is that people do when they have this experience. And so deep down inside, I was kind of like, I'm going to have to become a priest. And it was actually my sophomore year of college that I decided I'm going to go to the seminary and I'll give this a shot. And I kept pushing on that door. I went to the seminary and I graduated, started working youth ministry, and then I went to a couple religious orders to try out religious life to see if that was for me. And then I came back into parish ministry and I was just wondering, why can't I settle with this? And one of the things that one of my spiritual directors through my 30-day silent retreat was, he said, you really gotta believe that the priesthood is not the only way that God might be calling you to serve. And that, I think, was symptomatic of where Catholics are in general, that somehow we've come out with this understanding that if you're really going to serve God, you got to be a priest or a sister. Or you got to be a missionary in Africa or something. But if you read what the popes are saying, I mean, they're saying what my spiritual director was saying back then. No, by virtue of your baptism, you've been called to be a missionary. You've been called to be holy. And that was what I needed to know, but deep down inside. And God gave me a special grace to just say, no, you're not called to the priesthood. You're called to be a layman working in the church. And that's really what I'm doing now.
Where are you now? What are you doing now?
I'm the director of new evangelization for the Diocese of Lansing.
What an awesome title.
That, you know what, I am not worthy. I am not worthy. The bishop actually just came up and he says, just so you know, I'm the CEO. And he says the chief evangelization officer.
Yeah.
He's like, so you work under me, and we kind of joke about who's really the CEO here. And I will say about my own journey, the one thing I missed out on, because there wasn't something there for me, was discipleship. No one was really there to take me by the hand and sort of help me move through that new life in Christ. And so I fumbled a lot through what's right, what's wrong. And it was actually one of the reasons I went back to Westphalia, where I grew up, to start youth ministry. I remember telling someone, if it was my mom or dad, that I needed to help people. I need to help young people navigate the dangers of high school. Those people who want to live their life for Christ.
Now you're married.
I'm married, and in this whole time, all I want to do is just talk about that great blessing of marriage with my wife Allison and my 2 children.
What do you think are the parallels there? Falling in love with Christ and then meeting the woman that God desires you to marry. Like when you're in love, you can't help but keep it to yourself.
Oh yeah. That's the best example of evangelization.
Yeah.
No question about it. When I stand and try to sort of teach certain principles of evangelization, that's the example I use, is that, when you begin to fall in love with somebody, that's evangelization. When the person you love is so much in your heart and in your thoughts that it becomes a part of almost every conversation.
Do you think today with people who are searching and maybe kind of running into their identity crisis, I guess what would you say to them?
I would say there's a passage that comes to mind with my own experience, and it's a promise from God. He says, "Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door will be open. Ask and you shall receive." That's not a man's promise. That is a promise from God. And I know the Lord knows our hearts. And if we are seeking, if we are desirous of His truth and really going after Him, He will meet us there. Don't be afraid to call out to Him and ask Him, as though He's standing right here. Come into my heart. Take me, whatever you want from me. And I really do believe He will make good on His promise.
We're all seeking, but God hasn't left us without a map. The Bible is full of these answers to our heart's deepest desires. Every one of those answers lead up to Jesus Christ, who not only is what we're looking for, but He's the person who's come seeking us. He's God in pursuit of us. And so for all of us who are struggling, all of us who are searching, for all of us who have yet to ask that question, what are we really looking for? Christ encounters us, meets us, and invites us into a journey. And so remember to seek, and you'll find.
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
Sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you, oh, I
you way more than a feeding tube, way more than YouTube needs another billion views. And so I look to fill all these empty pews by first emptying myself to get made new. Cause how can I ask someone who's 22 to do unto others as you want done unto you, if I too have been made the change and been infused by the Holy Spirit and clean through and through? And only then will we really see the breakthroughs. Some call it voodoo, but see, we know the real truth. So all you doubting Thomases, it's time to feel wounds. From the womb to the tomb, I pay homage to Christ. My heart and yours have been super glued. And stop loving you, sorry, but no can do. God the Father thicker than that water blue. Know how I need you because I can see
Lord,
you.
I need you. Oh.